reception, it's time for a story. Now today I have picked one of my favourite books. I hope you like it, especially the bit at the end's funny. I hope you laugh along. It's called Yuck, That's Not a Monster. And the author is Angela McAllister, so the person who wrote the book. Let's have a read of the blurb on the back to find out a bit more about the book. When Mr. and Mrs. Monster's 3 eggs hatch, the first 2 monsters are frightful and horrid. Mr. and Mrs. Monster are delighted, but then the 3rd monster hatches and he's fluffy and cute and pink. Oh no! Yuck, that's not a monster. So we have got Mr. and Mrs. Monster were very proud of their 3 eggs. Mr. Monster kept them warm by huffing with his hot, stinky breath. Mrs. Monster screeched to them. One stormy night, the first egg cracked. Out climbed an ugly little monster with prickly spikes and snarly fangs. Ah, he's frightful, sighed Mr. and Mrs. Monster happily. So that's what they called him. Then the 2nd egg cracked. Out climbed another ugly little monster with horny spines and bristly warts. Ooh, she's horrid, gasped Mr. and Mrs. Monster happily. So that's what they called her. There's horrid with the spines and the warts. Ooh, they look a bit disgusting. Then, so there they are, Mr. and Mrs. Monster, and frightful and horrid. But then the 3rd egg shook a bit. Frightful and horrid gave it a poke. Out crept something very soft and pink. Ugh, he's sweet, said the little mother. Let's squash him. To squash the poor little pink monster. He looks cute. Well, he's not what we expected, said Mrs. Monster. He's a little bit of a shock. Let's throw him in the rubbish bin, said Mr. Monster. Suddenly there was a crash of thunder. Mama! cried the fluffy one and jumped into Mrs. Monster's arms. She looked down at her bundle of sweetness. He may look different on the outside, but inside he's a monster, just like us. So they called him Little Shock. So we've got 3 monsters: frightful, horrid, and Little Shock. Each day, frightful and horrid grew hairier and scarier. They learned how to spit and hiss and snarl and scratch. Oh, that's not nice. But Little Shock grew more fluffy. He liked to gurgle and roly-poly and twinkle his big blue eyes. He loved his brother and sister and he followed them everywhere. Have a look. Oh, so cute. Look at those blue eyes. Oh, really cute and fluffy. If you want to play with us, you've got to be wild and rampageous, said Frightful and Horrid. They showed him how to howl at the moon. Ooh, ooh, until it hid behind a cloud. But Little Shock was afraid of the dark. They showed him how to squash and stamp and trample. But Little Shock saw a worried worm and sat down to give it a hug. Ugh, sneered Frightful and Horrid. He's just a cutie pie. Ugh, look at their face. Ugh, yuck. Soon, Frightful and Horrid were bold enough to go monstering in the wood. You must take your brother with you, Mrs. Monster said. Frightful and Horrid snorted grumpily, but they put Little Shock in a trolley, hid him under a blanket, and tugged him along. So there's their trolley. Can't see Little Shock, can you? And Frightful and Horrid pulling him. I wonder what's going to happen. In the wood, Frightful leapt out at a fox and made its fur turn white. Look at that. fox is now half white. So frightened. Grrr! Hurrah! Horrid pounced on a wild pig and made it jump into a tree. They had a wonderful time. Little Shock cuddled his blanket and played peekaboo with a little mouse. There's a mouse. What shall we do now? Said Frightful. Let's find something big to scare, said Horrid. Something big rustled in the bushes, so they crept up on it. Frightful and Horrid saw a hairy hump. They winked at each other, took a deep breath and roared. But the hairy hump was only a little bit of a big monster. He snarled and flashed his fiery eyes. Who dared to roar at me? Frightful and Horrid were too terrified to run away. Their spines shriveled and their claws curled up. Up. Look at that big monster. Suddenly, the big monster spotted Little Shock. Ooh, candy floss, he said. He thinks Little Shock's candy floss. Little Shock stared up at the monster's face. His big blue eyes grew wider and wider. Then, mwah, he gave the monster a kiss right on the cheek. Look at that. The big monster wailed and dropped Little Shock in horror. He was so afraid that his fur turned to frizz and his bristles fell out. Look at all those bristles. They're coming out. Help! He cried, it's adorable! And he ran away, crying for his mummy. Frightful and Horrid couldn't believe their eyes. You kissed him! You kissed him! They laughed. Horrid swung his little brother up high in the air and sat on Frightful's shoulders. Maybe being cute is useful after all, she said, giving him a pinch. Little Shock just purred happily. Come on then, said Frightful. Let's go home and all kiss Mum and Dad. Oh, look, there's Little Shock on Frightful's shoulders. There's Horrid. And that's the end of the I like that book, especially the bit when Little Shock kisses a monster. It's very funny, isn't it? Did you like that story? I'd love to know what was your favourite bit of the story. Get your grown-up to comment it below the video and tell me which bit did you like and why. Hope you enjoyed it. See you soon. Bye.